Beyond the Mic with Sean Dillon.
We're joined on the star line by an actor, director, model, and writer. His latest project is a horror movie set in the town of the same name. We welcome writer and director of Miracle Valley, Greg Sestero.
Thanks so much for having me.
Greg, let's go beyond the mic. What makes a good film great and a bad film great?
Bad film, great. Let's start with that. I feel like, a bad film to me is one that it's torture to watch. You're not following what's going on. You don't care about anybody. It's slow. It doesn't move. A bad film that's great is one where you keep following it because you're like, there's just simply no way this can really happen. Who would think of this? All these questions race through your head. But it's interesting enough to where you want to keep following it, and it brings out a great camaraderie with people you're watching it because, you're laughing and you're engaged through it, and you're having that question that you want to have often as you're watching a film is why, how, like all these things are popping through your head. Now, a movie, for example, that I think is great because it's great is one like Back to the Future or the original Star Wars because they capture an essence of time that is nostalgic and both modern, and it's something that stays with you in those movies, whether it's the score or the actors. It's something you can just rewatch over and over, and some of those movies have an element where you want to live in them. You want to go to the locations. You want to wear T-shirts. So I think it's just got to have that draw where, you see yourself in the characters and you can imagine being a part of that world. And I think it all comes back to who's creating it. I think a lot of the creators that we love are misunderstood, maybe in real life, but they're able to tell stories that really speak to us. So that's what I hope to do. Is I hope to take whatever strange journeys I've been on and share them with the world.
Well, you brought up Star Wars. Did you like The Force Awakens or not?
I pretty much stick to the original 3, 4, 5, and 6. I think that's the count. I just think there was something from 1977 to 1983 that just with those characters and the special effects and practical effects, I think it just worked for that time and for that generation. And I think really ever since then, they've been trying to recapture whatever was in those with different filmmakers, different attempts. I mean, what always has stayed great is the score because you still have John Williams, scoring these movies, but I just don't think they quite, hit the level of magic that those original 3 did. And so if I'm going to turn on Star Wars, I'm just going to, stick to Empire or A New Hope.
Your latest horror film, Miracle Valley, is an homage to those old school horror movie classics. How was this movie to create?
So it was really the first time that I, took on this adventure of sort of doing the whole writing, directing, starring. And really, I did a lot of research. Screenwriters talk about what they love to do, and people that I respect, and really their advice was follow the fun. And so, to me, a big element of a film is the location. And so, I had this really incredible spot down in southern Arizona that had, lakes and old churches and valleys and these really cool homes and abandoned haunted houses in the mountains that had been up there for a couple hundred years. And so I just scouted and went through and let the story kind of come to me. And I would watch, movies that I really loved, Hitchcock films, Breakdown with Kurt Russell, came out in the mid-90s. Just movies that I enjoyed sitting through, that, maybe the story is far out and the characters are, a bit out there. There's just something about those films that it takes you on the escape. And I wanted this film to sort of have that adventure where you jump in, you sort of don't ask the questions that real life asks you, and you just sort of get lost in this road trip with this group of people. So I really enjoyed making it. We shot it on Ari, which is as close to film now as I think you can. So it sort of has that 70s look. And I think, I love movies like The Hills Have Eyes and Race with the Devil.
Nice.
A couple modern ones like Don't Breathe and Hereditary. And so I just tried to go out there and make a movie that we really enjoyed making. I think that's a big part I've learned over the years is you can't really control how a movie's going to come out, but you can sort of control the experience of making it. And so we went out and just had a great time and had these amazing locations. We filmed at Lake Powell, which is where Planet of the Apes was filmed years ago. And it was just cool to be out there in the thick of it, making a film with your friends.
What was the biggest challenge during this project?
I think it was, I did a lot on this film. I went down there in May of 2019 and lived down there and wrote the script and scouted. And, I was kind of doing the producing and the writing and directing and starring. So it was a lot to take on. Any film is a big undertaking, but this one, wearing so many hats, I think that was a big challenge. And also, I thought filming in Arizona in November, I thought it'll be great. I'll wear a t-shirt, weather will be awesome. And it got so cold that I just literally almost froze to death. There was one night we were filming. It was brutally cold, and then you involve the blood and you're freezing even more, and there's the insects that are still kind of lurking. But there was one night we had to shoot a whole scene with the cult outside, and the rain started, and we ended up going till 3:00 in the morning, and just everybody was freezing cold, and we were running in to avoid the rain and cold. But it was just it definitely lent itself to the movie, because the movie is about strange characters, and I think the weather forced the actors to sort of work through that. But it was a great group. They never complained once. And I mean, at one point I was so cold, we had one of those heating fire things, and I think I caught on fire at one point.
Wow.
Whatever I got to do to stay warm. But you never would have thought Southern Arizona would be that cold. And so there we were.
You've been a model and an actor. Which was harder?
Oh, I think, acting is definitely way more of a challenge. It's, a different kind of craft. I think what I enjoyed about modeling was the shoots, getting out there with the photographer and creating a look and creating a feel outside of sort of the whole getting work, going to castings with 1,000 people waiting for 4 hours just to get a job. It was sort of going off with a photographer you really respected and trying to create a feel, because that's really what modeling is. You're selling a lifestyle, you're selling a feel. So I definitely enjoyed that aspect of it, and that also goes into film, because with film you're doing the same thing except you're employing dialogue and a situation, and for people to, motion pictures obviously is what it's called. But I think acting is definitely way more of a craft and takes more life experience and all that to bring to life.
There are plenty of bad horror movies out there, from Satan's Cheerleaders to The Room. Why is the horror genre filled with either really good movies, those movies that scare you to the core, or the ones we wish we didn't watch?
I think it's just the genre that you can take the biggest risks with, and I think anytime you risk something, you weigh exactly what you just said. So, The Room, for example, was a movie that was made to try to be the next Citizen Kane. It was made by a man who believed he was the next Marlon Brando. It was meant to make people cry and feel scared for 2 weeks, and instead we got something that makes people laugh for 20 years now, almost. So I think horror is something that, even when it's bad, I think you're still getting a little bit of the gore, you're still getting comedy, you're still getting absurd situations, which is, why a lot of us go to the movies. So I thought horror was a great genre to slip into and try out something new. And like I said, with the Disaster Artist, I felt like there was more pressure in telling the story behind, the making of this cult movie, and making sure to tell something that's honest, but also relatable and that tells, answers questions. So with Miracle Valley, it was going out there and taking all the movies that I loved and trying to give this audience something that really is fun and plays with the crowd. And we've done some touch screenings with it, and the crowd interacts with the film. They're laughing. There's a lot of humor. There's a lot of call out. So something about the way I work, people love to yell stuff at the screen. So Miracle Valley definitely really plays well with the crowd. It was really fun to see at the touch screen.
It's time for the Rocking 8, Greg. 8 random questions. Answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. There's no pressure. Who is the actor you were glad to make a film with, and the one you still want to work on a project with?
I'd say the actor I still want to work on a film with is Harrison Ford and Bryan Cranston. I was very lucky to work with him on Disaster Artist, because I'm a huge Breaking Bad fan. So that was really cool.
How about your favorite Hitchcock film?
Psycho.
Now, are you friends with any of your exes?
Yes. surprisingly.
Which is better, Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad?
Breaking Bad.
What's your best memories of driving through Ireland?
Driving through the sunset right outside Galway, watching sheep running alongside my car.
What excuse do you use way more than you should?
I'm tired. Which I've stopped. I've stopped using the word tired. I think you just should never refer to anything as being tired. You should just eliminate that word from your vocabulary.
Favorite ride in Disney World?
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Wow, there's a shock. I thought it would be Haunted Mansion.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, okay, they're close. It just depends the day you ask. Today, I've been watching Behind the Attraction on Disney Plus, and I was watching something on, actually, the Haunted Mansion yesterday.
That makes sense. How do you like your popcorn?
Butter and salt.
If you're enjoying these conversations, please check out another Beyond the Mic episode to find more actors, artists, and people you need to know. We'd also appreciate a like and subscribe on the Good Pods app. It's time for the back half with writer-director of the horror Miracle Valley, Greg Sestero. Greg, you've spent time overseas, Milan, Paris, when you were younger. How did that time overseas change the way you see movies?
It changed it quite a bit because I was thrust into the whole fashion world as a 17-year-old. I was in this major city going to the designers that I used to see in magazines and models I used to see in magazines who were 7, 8 years older than I was. So it immediately put me into the whole creative obsession of wanting to be noticed and make an impact. And I think immediately when I moved back from Milan and Paris, I started taking acting classes because I noticed in modeling, you're kind of stifled. You're limited to the page, and I knew to do bigger things, I needed to get comfortable with myself. And so I immediately jumped into acting classes, and I think it pushed me to, starting so young to try to learn the craft.
Greg, how paranoid are you?
About life?
About anything.
I'm more inquisitive versus paranoid. I think I always love to ask questions. I'm not somebody who really is big on being right or wrong. I'm more about studying stuff and saying like, oh, this is interesting. So I'm more inquisitive. I was a little terrified when I was living out in the middle of nowhere making Miracle Valley, writing the script. I was living in a house up on a hill in the middle of nowhere, which I thought would be a good idea coming from LA. But at night I would look out and I would hear animals. I would hear, wildlife, crickets, and I couldn't see anything out there. It was all dark. But if you were out in the mountains and you're out walking around, you could see completely in the house. So I would go to bed a little paranoid, maybe that somebody was going to pop in or an animal was going to pop in. So that did, bleed into the story and that part of living in the middle of nowhere. So I did have a little bit of paranoia of things lurking out there. So I did have that. But more in general, I'd say I'm more inquisitive.
What did you do during the pandemic quarantine?
So ironically enough, the pandemic just about started. The last time I was in Lubbock, it was a pretty big thing for me because within a week the pandemic happened. I became an uncle the night I was in Lubbock the last time. My nephew was born and the pandemic happened. So I went back to the house that I had in Arizona on a ranch, which I thought was kind of perfect. I was like, I still have this place for a few more months. I'm going to come out here. I'm going to, live here. I'm going to work on editing Miracle Valley. I'm going to do some writing. So I spent, a good 2 months living out in the Miracle Valley house, living under the stars, editing the film, writing scripts. I wrote a new UFO abduction film because out there, the whole UFO culture is really fascinating and a really big deal. So I spent it, being creative, getting a chance to have a break. I think I slept in for 2 months straight and just did a lot of hikes and then spent a lot of time with family and my nephew. So I caught up on rest and stayed productive. And luckily enough, when things started to loosen up, I had a new movie ready and a new script. So next week I'm going to be scouting Roswell and Texas and stuff for locations to make a new UFO film called Forbidden Sky. Forbidden
Sky, nice. If you could cast yourself in a remake of any old horror film, which would it be?
Man, I'd love to live in the world of Psycho, but I feel like it would be cool to do like a spin-off film. They kind of did that with Bates Motel, but I'd love to try to play Norman Bates.
Wow, that would be interesting. What scares you?
What scares me? So the two things I have are a fear of heights and I'm claustrophobic. So I've noticed what scares me is a lack of adventure. I think I love to, one of the things during the pandemic living out in the middle of nowhere in general is waking up and having that freedom each day. You know what, today I feel like going to this place and meeting up with this friend or grabbing coffee from my favorite place or going and having a glass of wine at the Greek restaurant in Malibu. Just the daily adventure of things you love to do and things you love to enjoy. And so I think having that, in a world without that, and also in a world without, your family and the ones you really love, I think that definitely brings, some fear because my grandma passed away last Thanksgiving and, she was older, but just the idea of sort of losing that comfort, is definitely scary. But any villain I feel like I could take on. I'm not so scared of that.
How important was it to see your fans again? Getting out and seeing the fans who saw The Room, know it's a bad horror movie, and yet keep going back again and again to watch it.
Yeah, that was definitely something that over the pandemic I was able to sit with and rest and think about. And I knew once I got a chance to get back out there, meet people, that I would definitely never take it for granted because, we didn't know how cinema was going to come back. Would it be normal? Would it be the same? Would it be just as enjoyable? And so I really appreciated it more than ever. And one of my passions is traveling, and there's just, something cool about hanging out with people in a, different state, different city. We all love movies, and it's a great way to connect. And it's just very fulfilling getting a chance to do that. And getting to see new places and the way people live and what environment people like to watch movies in. So I was very, very grateful to get back out and have that balance, because I love to be home and writing scripts and have that routine. But then there's something cool about getting out there and having that adventure. I think it's a huge part of growing as an artist is getting out and seeing new things.
How about your favorite film that people would be shocked that you love?
I guess I'm pretty in the ballpark when it comes to movies that I really enjoy in a classic way, but I would probably say, a lot of people like David Lynch and Lost Highway. I really used to like a movie called Johnny Suede that came out in 1991 that, I guess you could call it a total myth, but it was the guy who did Living in Oblivion trying to make a David Lynch type film. Brad Pitt was playing a Ricky Nelson character with a huge pompadour, and it was just something that I don't know, it was really out there, but spoke to me when I watched it as a young actor. And I thought, hey, if Brad can get away with this, then maybe there's hope for me. So I'd say Johnny Suede.
It's time for One Big Question with Greg Sestero Beyond the Mic. Greg, how have your thoughts on directing and acting evolved through the years?
I think I've stopped, caring so much about what people think. I think, we all start out wanting to be on the inside and making the movies that everyone thinks are cool and be, in the popular group. But then I started to realize, with The Room, what it taught me was you don't know with film what people are going to love and gravitate towards day to day, year to year. And so Tommy, at the time when I met him, was the least cool person ever. I mean, nobody wanted to be around him. No agent wanted to talk to him. We'd go out to dinner. People would stare at him weird, and then he goes and makes this movie, and I'm like, oh, I got 3 sex scenes in the first 10 minutes. It's terrible. Nobody's ever want this. And then here we are 20 years later, and it's a movie that, one of two with Rocky Horror that people interact with and screens around the world, and people love it, And so I just realized it's the people that are misfits that maybe aren't, the most socially accepted. Sometimes what they have to say on screen is what people are really looking for. I watched the thing with George Lucas, early on. He wasn't kind of aloof and not so much like the popular guy, but obviously his films, his creations were something that really spoke to people. So I've kind of stopped looking at that crowd and thinking, hey, what stories do I have? What movies do I want to make that I enjoy thinking about or enjoy wanting to tell, and stop, mediating what I think would fit in. So I think I've just cared less about maybe the perception of what people think, and more about, hey, I've been lucky to be in these theaters for years meeting fans. Let me make stuff for them that I think will entertain them, versus trying to please a crowd or critics that I don't even know.
He wishes he could star in a film spin-off of Norman Bates. Nearly froze to death filming his latest work of Miracle Valley, which is shown around the country. Go see it at a theater near you. Greg Sestero, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Have a good one. I'll talk to you soon.
And that, my friends, is Beyond the Mic.